Today is March 3rd, 2024. This is Jackie Beckett, and I am interviewing Barbara Neider at her home in Englewood, Colorado, for the Colorado NCJW Oral History Project. Good morning, Barbara. How are you today?
Fine, thank you.
I'm really excited that you were able to do this interview with me. Let's just get started. Will you tell me where you were born?
Well, actually, it's an interesting story. I was born outside the Canal Zone in Panama, and I came to the United States as an infant with a dual citizenship, and I'm happy that I chose to be a U.S. citizen. My parents both were in the tropics. My mother was a WAC in the Army, and my dad opened up moving picture theaters throughout Jamaica, Haiti, Panama, in that area.
That's great. What were their names?
Marvin and Jean Eder. Not Neider, Eder. It rhymes with Neider. Funny. E-D-E-R.
And so Neider is your married name, but they match.
That's right, they match.
And where were you living when you were growing up?
I lived first in New York, and my dad worked for some relatives there in certain different areas, and then he went into the insurance business, and he worked in Chicago, and then we moved to Peoria, Illinois, where he pursued insurance with family members. And then my parents said they wanted to take two daughters, my sis and myself, back to Chicago, and we ended up in Evanston, Illinois, because they thought the schools were the finest, and that's where I grew up.
Great. So while you were growing up in Evanston, will you tell me about your household and your Judaism at home?
We were very, very, very Jewish. We loved the holidays. We were a Reformed Jewish family. We loved to celebrate the holidays. And the most interesting story about my youth was when we moved from Peoria, Illinois, back to Chicago. My parents wanted to get housing. And every time we would go into an apartment complex, they would ask us our religion. And my mother would say, well, we're Jewish. And they would say, we're sorry. You'll have to go elsewhere. And this happened a lot and was very disappointing to me and my parents. And finally in Evanston, my parents went to an apartment, I'll never forget the street, on Brummel Street. And the lady, I forget her name, but when she asked the question, she said, good, welcome, we're all Jews too. That made our life there wonderful. And we were involved with the synagogue in Evanston, Beth Emmet, where I was married, my sister also. And life was great. I attended schools in Evanston. And then when it was time to go to college, I decided, I think I want to leave. And I don't know what made this happen, but I had a scholarship to the University of Wisconsin. And I went there, but I had met Bob Neider, who was kind of like a neighbor, but we didn't know each other. And I was fixed up with him. And I didn't want to go to Wisconsin anymore. So I came back and finished my education at National College of Education with a degree in elementary ed from K through 12. And that's when my husband became an intern. We were married, and he said, no, I'm not going to live in Chicago. We're going to move to Denver, Colorado. And that's where we've been the last 53 years.
Wow, what a wonderful story. Mm-hmm. So when you were in high school, were you involved in any Jewish activities?
My high school was not Jewish. It was very, very few of us. And most of the activities were at our temple, Beth Emmet. And we did plays, and we had fun, and we go to services. And there wasn't really bat mitzvah for girls, but there was confirmation. And my sister and I were both we were both graduated in a confirmation ceremony. Had to get that out right. Now, in the high school, we made Jewish friends, but actually the school was more run by those other kids that were not.
Okay. And how about at college? Were you involved in Hillel or any other Jewish activities at college?
My college didn't have a Hillel. It was very close to Northwestern. It mainly prepared us for teaching, but we did go to Northwestern Hillel and meet many Jewish people there, and that was a wonderful feeling.
Great. And once you graduated and moved to Colorado, did you have a teaching career with your teaching?
I definitely did. My husband decided we'd stay put in Colorado, and we love Denver, and he was accepted to be an intern with Rose Hospital. Rose Hospital was very close to a school that I thought, golly, maybe I could teach at Teller Elementary at 11th and Garfield. And we lived within walking distance. We did not have 2 cars. We drove here in 1, and things were very different then. So Bob started an internship at Rose Hospital after finishing med school in Chicago, and I taught for 3 years at Teller, 5th grade. And that starts my story of traveling children's theater, National Council of Education. And the story begins that I was teaching, and I loved my 38 children. I don't know how I knew their names, but I'd memorize them. And I adored my classes. And one day, we were told, go to the auditorium. Some women are coming to put on a show. And I said to my boys and girls, this is really going to be special. Well, it was. And I remember my words. When I'm through teaching school, I'm going to do that. And those words came true. Now, it wasn't National Council of Education's Children's Traveling Theater that was there. It was Junior League. And Junior League at that time did not have, I don't know if 1 or 2, Jewish people involved. Since then, it's become open, and that's a wonderful thing. I'm not sure they do that anymore. But I joined National Council of Jewish Women. I also was in the fashion field, and I did a lot of fashion work and modeling for a lot of stores. And I loved that life because part of the giving back, instead of just teaching, was to serve these children who had never seen live theater. They didn't know what it was to see a real stage, to see our animals, to see me as Snow White or somebody else as Sleeping Beauty. And that went on for me until my boys, which were born in 71 and 75. I don't know, that's when I stopped teaching, and then they became part of traveling theater because I'd take them with me, schlep them along, and it was exciting. Till just a few years ago when I terminated.
When you got involved, why did you pick National Council of Jewish Women?
I just thought they did so many service things that meant so much to people. Because I knew women that just went to schools and told stories. I know people who helped the elderly, which I did also through Shalom Park. 4 years of my life or more was going there and doing a sing-along, all through council. And I was never political, but it was the people, the love, the connection. These are my friends today. I'm in touch with all the same people I've been in touch with for 38 years. And that's why I'm thankful.
That's great. Were there particular people that inspired you from National Council of Jewish Women?
I would have to say Marlena Siegel was one of the ones who, now in her elder years, she still inspires me. She was a spokeswoman in every category. Doris Lackner, I can give names of people that were wonderful. I know that Toots Siegel's mother, Mary Jacobs, a founder, and I have to say the largest piece of that were the women I worked with who were like directors of children's traveling theater. Marilee Wallach, I will never forget her goodness and her teaching me how to act like a scarecrow in the Wizard of Oz. I loved also Shirley Susan. These are women, may they rest in peace, they're no longer with us. Taught me a great deal. Even Evelyn Barish, who always acted with us, once came to me and said, I'm going to help you do this part. Can I come over to your house? That was all the connections that I loved so.
Why was traveling theater so important?
Well, I have to say when I started that children who were underprivileged in schools that were maybe way on the west side, way on the north side of Denver, didn't know about the joy of laughter, of looking up on a stage, and to watch children when you're on a stage, reacting and responding. There's nothing like it. And I would say every phase of National Council of Jewish Women offers that. And that's what I love the most.
That's great. You also mentioned the fashion. Were you involved in the fashion shows that we used to do?
Oh, definitely. I was on the ramp with many of the gals we worked with, Marlena and I, even Rose Hospital. Many of the stores would have shows, and I was the one Jewish girl in a lot of those, and I was very proud to be that. And that was a kind of different setting for me, but all of it kind of made me who I am. And to this day, serving and helping elders, young, infirmed, is part of me.
Were there any other projects that you remember?
I remember some of the, I think, food projects. We had wonderful sales, and we would have lunches. I had them in my home here. And I would listen to what they were taking to the government and what they were fighting for, but I was more involved with the other side than that.
Okay. Have you ever attended any national or conferences outside of Denver?
No, I have not.
Did you guys take a trip to Israel with NCJW at some point?
I didn't. I've been to Israel 3 times, but never with.
It was not with NCJW. Okay. And have you ever held any positions with NCJW Colorado?
Well, I believe when traveling theater was rolling along, myself and Iris Zucker were heads of contacting the schools through letters, appointments, and we would meet with principals and make up a schedule that we would Xerox off then, and that's what gave everyone the idea they knew where to go.
What do you think makes NCJW unique?
Probably, I think, the closeness of people who care about one another rather than just throwing it out there. They're very involved with one another. And if you have an idea, you can work with someone and make it go. And I think we did that with some of our shows. Not to say that as the years went on, we could sense the schools thinking, you know, when we started, there was no other theater. Now you see buses all over. There was integration in the schools. Children moved around. So instead of going to 90 schools in 3 years, we could go to all the schools and not pick and choose because everybody got to see us, and I love that camaraderie.
What impact do you think NCJW had on the community?
I think it has a large impact politically, socially, because there are many, many different attributes it has and many different places you fit in. And I think it's easier. I think that people feel more comfortable. I know 2 people who joined last year because they felt a degree of kindness. It wasn't that things were put on or put out there, and they felt comfortable.
What sort of difference has NCJW made in your life?
Well, I think it's easy through traveling theater. There help. They're being a part of our working. They're giving us budgets so we could have scenery made, costumes made. All of those things, inputs were for us to give back. And I did fail to talk about Fall Fashion Review. That was a very, very big thing. Even my husband participated. And we are both members. I'm a life member, Bob maybe too. So those things were very impactful.
What drove Bob to join the National Council of Jewish Women?
He loved the ladies. He loved the theater. He would come. He was in shows. My mother, before she got quite ill in the late 80s, we dressed her up in a costume at a school, and she was a dancer in Cinderella. We did this with our darling, darling actresses, and that's what I mean. There was a feeling of warmth and love.
Tell me a little bit more about Fall Fashion Review. What was it?
Fall Fashion Review starts, well, I don't know what month, but maybe early spring. And we all call each other, let's get rid of this clothes, these clothes, where we're going to have a display and sell to the community. It was such a wonderful big event, headed by many women, but I believe two of my friends were Marlena, who knew about it. And Marlena had been in traveling theater before me, and then she took the reins of this, and she made me do a lot. And I loved it. I think Bob and I were given the Hannah B. Solomon Award once because of the work we did, which we loved. We would collect clothes. It wasn't easy. Some of the cleaners would have drop-off points and they would collect. We would collect in houses. I didn't have a big house at the time. Marlena's whole basement was filled. Then we would go looking for where are we going to do it. We want to do it in a Jewish place, and the JCC was where we first held Fall Fashion Review. We would advertise, we would put bulletins all over town, and I want you to know, we made friends that I still have in a telephone book because they loved us. We would set aside clothes saying, oh, Virginia, your family will love these things. And here we've got a great deal. And it was always to give them what they wanted, not to try to make money off people or this or that. And it was so special. I'm very sorry to see it's gone. And maybe that's something that could come back.
Yeah. Was it connected to the thrift shop?
It was. Now, I came to Denver, and the thrift shop was run, I think, by Evelyn Barish and somebody else. And it stopped because on Colfax, they couldn't keep the stuff there anymore. Things had changed, and I didn't know that story. And I think that's when Marlena started collecting the most clothes. And she always had basements full. I mean, we sold furs. We did it all. And it was fabulous week. Mm-hmm.
What were your favorite projects? You've mentioned two, but are there others that you were interested?
Well, I talked about, I think probably my favorite projects weren't so much as projects, but going to meetings. I did do that. I'd go to board meetings and talk about theater, and then I'd love having lunch or breakfast with whoever was there, going to dinners where they would discuss health issues and things like that. And all of it was just a well-rounded program.
Great. Have you belonged to any other Jewish organizations?
I'm a life member of Hadassah. I have family in Israel now. We speak FaceTime with people every other day who are going through the horrible times they are. And that's very close to my heart. In fact, I learned a couple days ago that a rabbi, a nephew of mine, will be in Denver, and he will be staying in this house, and I got to organize very kosher everything. Maybe that council will be able to divert me into some areas to have them stay in my home and still make it a kosher, Orthodox sort of home.
In terms of religious observation, does your household, when your children were growing up, did it resemble the same household that you grew up in, or was it different?
Probably more, and now even more, because my eldest son, Brad, married a girl whose family is, I would say, modern conservative modern Orthodox, and they keep kosher. And we fit into it so easily because I sometimes think it's such a beautiful thing in a family, the Jewishness, the Jewishkeit, that it's so nice to make that transition. And we all understand each other, so it's great.
Do you currently belong to a congregation?
We are in between Temple Sinai and HEA because our children are at each. So we support both, and we do high holidays with both, and it's interesting.
Would you characterize yourself as an observant Jew, a secular Jew, or somewhere in between?
In between.
Okay. You mentioned in growing up a incident of anti-Semitism when your family was trying to find an apartment. Had you ever been exposed to any other anti-Semitism?
That was the worst, because in my mind, even now, I can remember being frightened as a child, a 5-year-old coming from Peoria, Illinois, where it was a very Jewish community there, and we were related to people there, and watching my parents just terrorized, and how could this be? And I'm talking so many years ago, because I'm older now, way older, and I was 5. My sister was 7. So, yeah, that was, and I've seen a lot more now.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with me. Is there anything else that I haven't asked you about that you'd like to share with us today?
I have a funny story about the theater.
Okay.
Because we used to get on the stage, and sometimes a lot of us couldn't remember our lines as we got a little older. Some of the people would write notes here. Some of them would, if they carried a bucket, they'd be on the outside. And one day, I was playing Rapunzel, Let Down Your Hair, and we had a great big tower. And my darling friend Iris Zucker was the prince, and we had to use our princes that were women and dress them as a prince, and it was always wonderful. And she came out on the stage, and instead of saying her line, which was, "Wow, what a day," she came out and said, "This has really been a hell of a day." And I don't know who laughed. The kids didn't, because, you know, they're looking up like this with the hair coming down, but the teachers got it, and I apologized when we left. But the other cute thing was Marilee Wallach, after any kind of showing of The Wizard of Oz, you know, when Auntie Em and Uncle Henry call her as she's twirled around, and they say, "Dorothy, time for dinner, dear," depending where we were in town, Marilee would say, "Tacos tonight, children, enchiladas, and you'll love everything." And then we'd go to another neighborhood and she'd say, "Knishes tonight, children, and we'll have some delicious chicken something." And everyone loved her. We miss her greatly. Those were two things that always stood out in my mind.
Such wonderful women. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for allowing me to do that.